Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajapacharya Ashtotara Shata Śrīmad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajapacharya Ashtotara Shata Śrīmad Divine Grace the Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai ki Jai Tulsi Maharani ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Nu Govardhan Dham ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, entitled The Creative Impetus, Chapter 26, The Hellish Planets, Text 40. Excuse me, Text 39. So if everybody could please repeat after me. Shrutva stulam tata sukshman rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nirjitam anam shanai sukshmam diya nayat iti Shrutva stulam tata sukshmam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nijitam atmanam shanai sukshmam dhyānayat iti. How does that fit like that?
It's not really part of the verse, but you can just kind of say it. Yeah.
Okay. Shrutva stulam tata shukshvam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nijitam atmanam shanai shmukshma, excuse me, shanai sukshmam dhyanayad iti shrutva stulam tata shukshvam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nijitam atmanam shanai shukshmam dhyanayad iti.
Shrutva stulam tata sukshmam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nirjitam atmanam shanai sukshmam dhyani iti. Shrutva stulam tata sukshmam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nirjitam atmanam shanai sukshmam dhyani iti.
Shrutva stūlam tada sukshmam rupam bhagavato yatihi stule nirjitam atmanam shanai sukshmam dhyanaye iti.
Would you like to chant? All right. Shrutva, after hearing of, from the disciplic succession. Stulam, gross. Tata, as well as. Shukshmam, subtle. Rupam, form. Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yati, a sannyasi or devotee. Stule, the gross form. Nirjitam, conquered. Anam, the mind. Shanai, gradually. Shukshmam, the subtle, spiritual form of the Lord. Diya, by intelligence. Nayat, one should lead it to. Iti, thus. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One who is interested in liberation, who accepts the path of liberation, and is not attracted to the path of conditional life, is called yati, or a devotee. Such a person should first control his mind by thinking of the Virata Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, and then gradually think of the spiritual form of Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, after hearing of both forms, period. Thus one's mind is fixed in samadhi. By devotional service, one can then realize the spiritual form of the Lord, which is the destination of devotees. Thus his life becomes successful. Purport. It is said, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahor Vimukte. If one wants to progress on the path of liberation, he should associate with Mahatmas, or liberated devotees, because in such association there is a full chance for hearing, describing, and chanting about the name, form, qualities, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of which are described in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. On the path of bondage, one eternally undergoes the repetition of birth and death. One who desires liberation from such bondage should join the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and thus take advantage of the opportunity to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from devotees and also explain it to propagate Krishna consciousness. Okay, next. Text 40. My dear king, I have now described for you this planet Earth, other planetary systems and their lands, varshas, rivers, and mountains. I have also described the sky, the oceans, the lower planetary systems, the directions, the hellish planetary systems, and the stars. These constitute the Virata Rupa, the gigantic material form of the Lord, on which all living entities repose. Thus I've explained the wonderful expanse of the external body of the Lord. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 26th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled A Description of the Hellish Planets, completed in the Honolulu Temple of the Panchatattva, June 5th, 1975. So continuing, there's a supplementary note written by His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada in his Gaudiya Bhashya. Its translation is as follows. Learned scholars who have full knowledge of all the Vedic scriptures agree that the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are innumerable. These incarnations are classified into two divisions called Prabhava and Vaibhava. According to the scriptures, Prabhava incarnations are also classified in two divisions, those which are called eternal and those which are not vividly described. In this 5th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, in chapters 3 through 6, there is a description of Ṛṣabhadeva, but there is not an expanded description of his spiritual activities. Therefore, he is considered to belong to the second group of Prabhava incarnations. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 1st canto, chapter 3, verse 13, it is said, Ashtame Merudevyam tu naber jata urukrama darshayan vartmadiranam sarvashrama namaskritam. Lord Vishnu appeared in the 8th incarnation as the son of Maharaj Nabi, the son of Angidra, and his wife Merudevi. He showed the path of perfection, the paramams, the stage of life, which is worshipped by all the followers of Varnashram Dharma. Ṛṣabhadeva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his body is spiritual, Satchidananda Vigraha. Therefore, one might ask how it might be possible that he passed stool and urine. The Gaudiya Vedanta Acharya Baladeva Vidyabhushan has replied to this question in his book known as Siddhanta Ratna, first portion, text 65 through 68. Imperfect men call attention to Ṛṣabhadeva's passing stool and urine as a subject matter for the study of non-devotees who do not understand the spiritual position of a transcendental body. In this 5th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the illusion and bewildered state of the materialist of this age is fully described. Elsewhere in 5th canto, 5.5.19, Ṛṣabhadeva stated, Idam shariram mama durvibhavyam. This body of mine is inconceivable for materialists. This is also confirmed by Lord Kṛṣṇa in Bhagavad-gita. Avajānanti mūḍhā mānuṣīṁ tanum āśritam paraṁ bhāvam ajānanto mama bhūta-maheśvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. The human form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is extremely difficult to understand, and, in fact, for a common man it is inconceivable. Therefore, Ṛṣabhadeva has directly explained that his own body belongs to the spiritual platform. This being so, Ṛṣabhadeva did not actually pass stool and urine. Even though he superficially seemed to pass stool and urine, that was also transcendental and cannot be imitated by any common man. It is also stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that the stool and urine of Ṛṣabhadeva were full of transcendental fragrance. One may imitate Ṛṣabhadeva, but you cannot imitate him by passing stool that is fragrant. The activities of Ṛṣabhadeva therefore do not support the claims of a certain class of men known as arhat, who sometimes advertise that they are followers of Ṛṣabhadeva. How can they be followers of Ṛṣabhadeva while they act against the Vedic principles? Shukadeva Goswami has related that after hearing about the characteristics of Lord Ṛṣabhadeva, the king of Konka, Venka, and Kutaka initiated a system of religious principles known as arhat. These principles were not in accord with Vedic principles, and therefore they are called Pashanda Dharma. The members of the arhat community considered Ṛṣabhadeva's activities material. However, Ṛṣabhadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is on the transcendental platform and no one can compare to him. Ṛṣabhadeva personally exhibited, what does it say that, what path came from Ṛṣabhadeva, what followers? It's a modern path. What is it? Jains, yeah. Ṛṣabhadeva personally exhibited the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Davan 568, Davanalas tadvanam alelehana sahatena dadaha. At the conclusion of Ṛṣabhadeva's pastimes, an entire forest and the Lord's body were burned to ashes in a great forest fire. In the same way, Ṛṣabhadeva burned people's ignorance to ashes. He exhibited the characteristics of a paramahamsa in his instructions to his sons. The principles of the heart community, however, do not correspond to the teachings of Ṛṣabhadeva. Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushan remarks that in the 8th canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there is another description of Ṛṣabhadeva. But that Ṛṣabhadeva is different from the one described in this canto. End of the 5th canto. Om Ganativarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuvamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Kridvachalam Pangam Langai Tegadim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diritananam Vancha Kapdribhishta Kripa Sindhabhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, we have concluded our tour of the universe, including the tour of hell. Of course, we concluded a few verses ago, our tour of hell. And then we've also just concluded the 5th canto, so we'll be starting the 6th canto. Which the first part of the 6th canto is a Jamil, right? Yes, so we'll be discussing the Jamil, that whole section of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, very instructive in many ways. So here in this verse 39 of today, says, one who is interested in liberation, who accepts the path of liberation, is not attracted to the path of conditioned life, is called yati, or a devotee. So one thing is to be interested in spiritual life or interested in Krishna consciousness, and another thing is to accept it. There's two different things. One is to be interested, or to be amused, or be curious of something, or to be what do you call when somebody is impressed, and another thing is to accept it. Like I remember I drove with Tirtha Maharaj years ago. This one lady, I forgot where it was about an hour and a half away. It's quite a long, because we just, anyways. So this lady, she would call Radha Dasi, those of you who know Radha Dasi, Yudhishthira's wife, and she would arrange speaking engagements. It means this person was a teacher, and she would teach college students. And Radha Dasi would sometimes drive out and speak to her students. So Radha Dasi couldn't do it for some reason, maybe because it was too far away, but whatever it was. But she called, I'm sure she would have drove for some other reason, but she called Tirtha Maharaj and asked him if he wanted to do it. So I drove out there with him, and quite a long distance for one class, but we drove all the way out there, and gave a class. He gave the bulk of the talk, and then when it was questions and comments time, he had me answer some questions. And then when we were driving back here to the temple, he was saying, "Oh yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it again. It's kind of a long drive." But anyways, what he said was that he was commenting on the students, and he said, yeah, I see often that a lot of people, they're impressed. It means they're impressed with the philosophy, they may be impressed with the devotee's character or whatever. And he says, I see that often, that a lot of people are impressed or interested to some degree. But being impressed is one thing, but then them actually taking some steps in spiritual life is another thing. And that is more rare. Like we meet people sometimes and they say, yeah, I'm really impressed with what you do and I could never do that. And that's where they kind of stop there. I can never do that. Now, one thing is we could see that, okay, well, hey, I was interested and now I've accepted it, right? I've accepted the path of liberation. Now, one thing is there's different levels of acceptance, or there's different levels of surrender. Like, if someone wants to, which was brought up recently in Dharmaseta Prabhu's class, in the realm of charity, or in the realm of giving donations, someone may have, which I brought up in this class some time ago, but it's a relevant point that I attend the board meetings here at the temple, and part of the board meetings is looking at accounts. I mean, you have to do that. You don't look at accounts, and the temple may close, right? You have to keep track. So, but I remember I was looking at who was giving donations, the different names, and I was actually very surprised. There was one person who I know for a fact doesn't make much money. I know it for a fact. I know their job. I know them personally. But I was very surprised because they were like on the top, what it was, 10 or 5 in giving donation to the temple. So, as was stated in Dharmaseta Prabhu's class recently, that Krishna doesn't see what, it's a saying, but Krishna doesn't see what you give; he sees what you hold back. So, so in other words, there's different levels of acceptance, or there's different levels of surrender. We could surrender 10%, we could surrender 20%, right? On and on. There's different levels of surrender. But if we want to claim to be members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we want to claim to be followers of Srila Prabhupada, then we should know that we have to give 100%. And if we can't do that now due to our own conditioning, we should know what the standard is to give 100%. Or as Jesus Christ, he was saying, he used to be a bad brahmachari, now he's a spider. This spider used to not, anyways. Here. Yeah.
I thought you were making a philosophical point.
Know.
There really was a spy. I
Yeah.
was trying to figure where is Bhagavatam going.
He came down right here. So,
Your darshan.
yeah. So, what were we saying?
You were saying something about Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, Jesus Christ, yeah. So there's some thing that's related to Jesus Christ, in that he would say, he said, I don't want any, in essence, I don't want any lukewarm followers. I want some.
Lukewarm, I spew from my mouth.
How does it go?
Hot or cold?
Yeah,
You're in or out?
yeah.
Don't.
Hot or cold, lukewarm, I
spit
spit from my mouth. So, so in other words, he wanted people to be, giving 100%. Jesus Christ, in terms of his followers. Just like some man came to him and said, in essence, "Oh, save me, and I want to be your follower," this and that. And he was a wealthy person, And then Jesus said, okay, fine. Just you go back and you give away all your wealth and you join me. Let's go. And the man looked very depressed and he turned around and he left and he didn't follow Jesus Christ. And that's where Jesus Christ said that it is easier to string an elephant through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to attain the kingdom of God. So it means for someone who's attached, they may be rich, but for someone who is rich and attached and who's not going to give anything, means their valuable time for spiritual life. So we can't just say, hey, I'm a follower of ISKCON, hey, I'm a follower of Prabhupada. Okay, we could say that, but the standard is to give 100% of one's energy. And ultimately become to the point where we're not attracted to conditional life. And such a person is called a yati, or a devotee, or as Prabhupada translates in the word by word, a sannyasi. Means one who's always striving. Yati means to strive and keep on striving. Because without striving, we are sure to sink. Just like if you're thrown in a, for the swimmers out there, or for the non-swimmers out there, means those who know how to swim and those who do not know how to swim. Sometimes a form of teaching people how to swim, at least here in Bangladesh, what they do is they take their 5 years old or 7 years old, however they're old, and they throw them in the deep end. Means a very deep end of the pool. They just throw them in and they say, all right, figure it out. Now, of course, if the boy is drowning or whatever, then they'll save him. But it's kind of a rough form of sink or swim, right? Now, if someone's in the ocean or somebody's swimming, you have to exert energy to stay above the water, to not drown. You have to exert energy. So similarly, in this world or in spiritual life, we have to exert energy, or else we're sure to sink. We have to exert energy. And therefore, yati means always striving. And then what are we striving to do? Such a person should first control his mind by thinking of the Virat Rupa, the gigantic universal form of the Lord. So you have, right, the sun is his eye, the moon is his other eye, and different, right? This Virata Rupa, the gigantic universal form. And then gradually, the more advanced meditation is to meditate on Krishna, to meditate on Radha Krishna, meditate on Radha Giridhari, Shama Sundar. And then to fix the mind in samadhi, to have it remain fixed on Krishna. This is the idea. So it's a gradual process, and first, again, people are interested, and then hopefully people accept. And then when they accept, hopefully they accept, or they know that they should be giving 100%, and hopefully they strive toward that direction of giving 100%. Yati, always striving, always meditating on Krishna. So it is the business of the devotees to try, means the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to try to give Krishna consciousness to others. Start a college program, start a prasadam distribution program, start a this program, start a that program. Do something. Start social media advertisements. Do something. Don't just talk about doing something. Do something. And don't just sleep. To do something is important. And people are out there, and people are actually waiting, as as Prabhupada said, they're waiting for the Sankirtan party to come. They're sitting suffering in their miserable homes and just waiting for the Sankirtan party to hear the devotees chanting Hare Krishna. And I remember at the LA Ratha Yatra when we were going down the street, and then we hit the boardwalk. There's a lot of house or apartments there, and you see people looking out, and you have that feeling that they're waiting, right? Suffering, waiting for deliverance. So, and in terms of people waiting, just like last night, we went to Chula Vista, to the Krishna Lounge there in Chula Vista, and a few people came last night. I was asking them how they heard about it. I usually do that when people are at the temple or at the Krishna Lounge here in Pacific Beach, but I asked them last night how they heard about it. And one person said, I saw your poster that you posted in Chula Vista. Devotees went out and posted posters. And actually, I was wanting to go to the Pacific Beach Krishna Lounge for years now, but I never made it. But he said, I saw your poster in Chula Vista, and I was thinking, oh, this is really interesting. And then he said he went on with his day, and then he went back to see the poster, and the poster was taken down because it was like on a telephone pole or something like that. So city doesn't like stuff like that. So they took it down, and then he was lamenting. He was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go look around 3rd Avenue, see if there's any more posters? And then he said he realized that he took a picture of it. He said, okay, good. I took a picture of it. And he showed up. And he was chanting, and he was associating with the devotees, and he had prasadam, and looked like he had a good time. His name's JJ. JJ, right? Radha Ramana Haribol. But he said, yeah, he didn't make it. And the reason why he didn't make it, he said, I was thinking about coming to the Pacific Beach one, but it's far. He said, I'm in Chula Vista. It's far. But he said, this is just 10 minutes away from me. And I told him, I said, yes, we came down here for you.
And it's true.
And there was another couple who came, and very nice people. And I asked them how they came, and they said, well, we're walking by, and we heard the kirtan, from the street. And then they saw the sign, because we have a sign outside, because it's kind of, the main street's here, and then you kind of have to walk through this hallway, and then there's businesses, and then that's where we are. So the sign's out on the street, so people have some idea that they're in the right spot. So they said, oh, we heard the kirtan, and we saw the sign, so we walked in. And yeah. So then I was talking to them, and she said, they're a couple, but I was asking her, and she said, yeah, my mother, she actually had been listening to this Hare Krishna mantra for the last year on YouTube, the kirtans. And I was, oh, that's very interesting. And she's like, yeah, my mother, we live together, and we're trying to get more into the spiritual path and this and that. And she was saying, it's very nice that you guys are down here. There's not a place like this around here that's doing kirtan. And it's very encouraging, because a lot of the stuff where they're doing kirtan is like up north, Encinitas, here, there. So it's very good. And she said, yeah, she said she'll try to bring her mother next week. And then I told her, not in a weird way I told her, but I told her that too. Not in a weird way, but I said, you should tell your mother that we came here and we created this for her also. So, but anyways, the point is that there's people out there, and it's just kind of searching for them or finding for them. Just like when someone is of age and they are interested in marrying, and they do it in a, could say, Krishna conscious or cultured way, and there's a whole search, right? You're talking about traditional kind of. But there's a search, means the parents are searching. Okay, where's a proper wife? Where's a proper husband? There's a whole search in terms of astrology. It's a whole thing, right? And it could be quite anxiety producing. Because sometimes astrological calculations don't match up. And sometimes other things don't match up, on and on and on. But it's a search for that match, to have a religious, Krishna conscious grihastha ashram. So in other words, there's many persons out there that just don't fit the match, but then there's one person who does, or maybe many people do, and then you pick one, right? So similarly, devotees, when searching for people, it's like you're sitting there at the park at Balboa Park. Devotees shouldn't feel discouraged. It's just people are not ready, right? They're passing by. And then you get one. All right, here we go. And they take a book, right? Give a donation. Srila Prabhupada said in a lecture one time, he said, if we ask somebody for a donation for Krishna and they do not give, he said, we should not feel sorry. It is meaning that Krishna in their heart is not inspiring them to give at that point. They are not so fortunate at this particular point. So for whatever reason, they're not so fortunate at this particular point. But we search. And there should be some anxiety there. There should be some anxiety. Just like a person who's getting older, right? There's anxiety. Okay, I need to marry for some people. Not everybody, but for some people, right? For the woman, for the man, there's anxiety. And it's a search. And then they find. So similarly, devotees, they should feel anxiety, searching for prospective bhakti candidates, for those who are interested, and then hopefully they accept. And then when somebody does that, that is their great fortune. And mahat sevam dvaram ahur vimukte, the doors of liberation open. They're open, they're completely open for those who associate with devotees. And because they get an opportunity to hear, to chant, to meditate on Krishna, and their path of bondage is being destroyed, gradually their conditioning is being destroyed, imperceptibly, and they're moving forward, sometimes imperceptibly also. And for those, the other part of this verse, yoshitam sangi sangam, for those who associate with, what is it? Yeah. Yeah. Tvamodvaram, the path to the doors to hell are open. Means those who associate. Now, what is this saying? Because it's mentioning women. Now, what is this saying? Is the Bhagavatam like anti-women or something? No, the Bhagavatam is not. But the Bhagavatam is mentioning that whether it's men or women, if they are too into the men and women thing, and everybody knows what the men and women thing is. If they're too into that, that is the path of darkness. Why? Because it's godless to be just absorbed in one's own selfish sense gratification, lust, anger, greed, etc., which the combination of materialistic men, materialistic women, this lights the fire and keeps it blazing very high. This material consciousness, then that's the path of darkness. So it means that if one wants to associate with the opposite sex, or one wants to, then they should understand that it's playing with fire. And ultimately they should try to live a life of a religious household life. And then take sannyas. So it's just saying we have to be careful, depending on, we have to be careful, that's all. It's it's not. A woman is not inherently evil, and a man is not inherently evil. But sometimes when they get together, then that produces some evil. Prabhupada said, "Man is good, woman is good. Combination bad." Prabhupada said that. Now, of course, if they're together for religious marriage and all that, then there's license for that, obviously, or else ISKCON would close down, right? Mayavad, Prakashananda, Saraswati, Prakashananda, and all this Mayavad groups, there's no scope for that. It's just you join, you take sannyas, or you're not joining. So the path of liberation, and Prabhupada says, those who want to, one who desires liberation from such bondage should join the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and thus take advantage of the opportunity to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from devotees and also explain it to propagate Krishna consciousness. So Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the life of the devotees, very most valuable work. Srila Prabhupada put much time into it. And it's we're very fortunate to be able to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And now we're going into another canto, 6th canto, which is a whole another journey. So we made it through the 5th canto. How long did it take us to go through this 5th canto? Didn't seem like it was that long, to me anyways, but does anyone remember? Oh, a year and a half. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so. Okay, is there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, we'll just have a few in-house first, and then we'll call on you.
Of course, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Wherever we traveled, because I was traveling, visiting some of the temples I'm responsible for, Vichai Krishna was there with us. I don't know, does he work? Does he sleep?
He distributes books.
He seems to be everywhere. Yeah. I offered my respects. Well, I had several questions, but you expertly answered them as the class unfolded. But, Prabhupada specifically, you just referenced it, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Why doesn't he just say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission or the Vaishnava effort or something? It's quite specific. Mm-hmm. That you might want to reflect on that a bit.
Okay.
And just before I forget, my father was a naval officer during World War II, and that's just like you described, throwing them in the deep end. Mm-hmm. They get these farm boys who never swam in their life, and they got to get them over there and as cannon fodder, and they just throw them in the pool. They watched a 15-minute movie. About how to dog... No, 15 minutes. 50 exactly. How to dog paddle and how to float. Yeah. For 15 minutes. My father, maybe it was 5 minutes, but I'm generous. It was 15. And they just threw him in the pool. And there was if you tried to get out, they had a big wood stick and they just smacked your fingers. He said, you'd be amazed. He didn't do it, but he said, you'd be amazed how fast people learn to swim.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so there's something to that, to...
sink or swim.
Sink or swim, and exerting effort, and we have to. And also, it's important to, they say, follow the command, just like on the battlefield. Now, of course, we're not saying do away with thinking, right? Be a robot, but in many cases, it's good just to, like sometimes. And you ask a new bhakta to clean the corner, clean the ceiling up there. So it's like, well, and then you have a whole Bhagavatam class or a whole discussion on why they should clean the ceiling. Because this, and but just or like it's a whole. Can you wash the pots? Well, I don't know because. This reason, and there's so many reasons, and it's just to execute is many times good. Just like, for example, myself, I was out distributing books. I have done that. For those of you who are wondering if I've ever done that, I have done that before. I did it for 4 years straight. So what? I was out distributing books, and Brigupati Prabhu came down here from Los Angeles, and we were out in like Chula Vista area going shop to shop. And I remember we went in restaurants. And he told me, okay, he's gonna go to like the people who are having their lunch, which is, you know, kind of disturbing to people sometimes. It's like, this is their sacred time, you know, don't bother me. But anyways, and I was supposed to go to the worker, or as vice versa. I think I was supposed to go to the lunch people, you know, and I hesitated, and I actually didn't do it. But it was supposed to be like a fast thing. Okay, we kind of go in there and go to the lunch. I go to the lunch people, and he goes to the workers, and then we go out. It's like a quick thing, operation. And I hesitated, and I didn't do it, and the time passed. And he got really mad at me, actually. And he said, oh, this isn't good. He said, this is like an operation, you know, and you have to follow. And now these people weren't approached, you know, so you have to follow. So yeah, and many times it's good to do that. Confirmation. In terms of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Srila Prabhupada, he was advised, why don't you just call it the International Society for God Consciousness? And then Prabhupada said, this is too vague. You know, God. Everybody, all the religions know about God. Everybody knows about God or something about God. But it's a vague term, God. It doesn't give a full description of who God is. Whereas Krishna is very specific. If you say God, you know, what do you think of? I mean, say Krishna, what do you think of? So Krishna, right, Shama Sundar, playing the flute, peacock feathers, cows, Vrindavan, gopis, Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, on and on, right? Now you say God, what do you think about? So therefore he wanted very specific International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because that's what he wanted to propagate, specifically not just God consciousness, but Krishna consciousness. And yeah, he could have called it so many things. And devotees were actually surprised because they're thinking, International Society. It's like, we're in New York. We have a storefront in New York. In the Bowery. It's like international. But Prabhupada was seeing internationally that, yes, we are going to have all of these temples. And as Srila Prabhupada's astrologer mentioned about him, he said, this boy, for his purposes, he will walk through fire. So Prabhupada was very determined. And of course, pure devotee and all. So that's something about why Krishna consciousness, because that's what we're all about. We're about being Krishna conscious and propagating Krishna consciousness. So I don't know if that...
Very good.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question here about the translation, the last translation of this chapter.
Okay.
One who is interested in liberation, who accepts the path of liberation and is not attracted to the path of conditioned life, is called a yati, or a devotee. Mm-hmm. Okay, so assume that we're trying to be devotees. Such a person should first control his mind by thinking of the Virat Rupa, the gigantic formula. So how do we relate to this? Do we need to think of the Virat Rupa? What does this mean for us as practicing devotees?
Well, generally, when Prabhupada talks about the Virat Rupa, gigantic universal form of the Lord, which is the universe, right? He says this is it is obviously a less advanced meditation than obviously Shama Sundar worship on meditation on Krishna. And Prabhupada would say for those who are not so advanced, they may not be able to immediately go to meditation on Krishna, but first they meditate on the universal form, the gigantic universal form. Therefore, it's the first step in God realization. So there's a bit of a kind of progression in this verse. Okay, one who is interested in liberation, one who accepts the path of liberation, one who's not attracted to conditional life, and then first controlling the mind by thinking of the Virat Rupa, and then gradually thinking of the spiritual form of Krishna, and then fixing one's mind in samadhi. So, and then realizing the spiritual form. So it's a bit of a progression. But Srila Prabhupada would urge people just worship Krishna, yeah. Now, if someone can't do that, then the Bhagavatam, there is some scope. Okay, first step in God realization, universal form. Or even if someone can't, like in the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna gives many different options. Okay, you can't fully surrender, then, there's different options. With the last being that, okay, at least give some type of charity. Do something. Just don't be selfish. Like, do something, right? So it seems that it's in that mood. I mean, it means that Prabhupada's saying, okay, best go to Krishna worship directly, but if they can't, then if they have to start here, then start here. Maybe you have some other...
I'm generally, it's a genuine question. And well, let me ask you this, because I know periodically, I don't know how much you do it now, but periodically you would go on hikes.
Yes.
With people, yeah.
Yes.
Now, on those hikes, would you sometimes talk about this universal form?
I think
because
we
after
should.
you're out in the mountains, right?
I think we should, yeah. Usually we don't, but I think we should, yeah.
Because, I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah.
First step in God realization.
Yeah. Seeing God in nature. Yes.
Yeah, also one of the principles of meditating on the universal form, I should say one of the results is a sense of dependence, and then from that dependence develops a sense of gratitude, and from that sense of gratitude comes a sense of reciprocation, let me serve. So one of the reasons it's called first step of God realization, it's meant to be a progressive march towards the position of bhakti. So from going from Shanta Ras, more or less, a sense, like I say, dependence, then gratitude, then a desire to, indebtedness and a desire to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, because you say, oh, look at nature, and you say, I'm depending on it, right? And then you'd say, oh, I'm very grateful, for the sun and for this and that. And this is, you can just think of someone who just has not much concept of God, right? Or of Krishna, yeah. Mother
is nurturing. I'm dependent, and nobody can repay a good mother.
Yeah, and then they start thinking, okay, what about the Father? What about Krishna? What about, and then it kind of advances like that. Okay, Vijay, Krishna?
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much. You're very kind. Dandavat pranams. Prabhu, in order for me to present my question to you, I need to give you two quotes from Srila Prabhupada. And the first one is as follows, quote, because Bhagavad-gita is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one need not read any other Vedic literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad-gita, end quote. This quote, as you know better than me, is from the introduction to his Bhagavad-gita as it is. And the second quote, in order for me to ask my question for today, is related to the last sentence you gave us today because you chose the purport for text 39. And in this last sentence, I find that we need, if we want to become liberated, we need to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and we need to explain it to others. So based on these two quotes, my question is, how much attention should I give to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam after knowing that for Srila Prabhupada, Bhagavad-gita is enough for me to become liberated?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Prabhu.
Everybody's looking for a shortcut.
So, sometimes people, unfortunate people, they think that, you could say unfortunate, misinformed, unfortunate. They think that Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Krishna consciousness was not complete. And therefore they need something else besides what Srila Prabhupada presented. Again, uninformed, unfortunate people. So I heard that one time a person, he was in the Los Angeles temple, and there was a class going on. And one disciple of Srila Prabhupada was giving the class, the sannyasi, and this person asked the question to the speaker and said, "Do you really think that Srila Prabhupada gave you everything you need to be fully Krishna conscious? Do you think his presentation was everything you need?" And it was a pointed question, challenging question. And then the person giving the talk said, even if Srila Prabhupada just came to America and all he gave us was the holy name, he said that would be enough, because all realization and everything is in the holy name of Krishna, right? Now, which is a good answer, because it's true, right? Vidya vadu jivanam, all knowledge, everything comes from it. So that's there. But then we think that, okay, well, what about Bhagavad-gita? Do I just need to read Bhagavad-gita? Do I just need to read Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? So in other words, it may be, if a person was to do that, just read Bhagavad-gita, or just chant Hare Krishna, or just read Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, so one can become perfect by any of those processes. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padaseva, one could become perfect. So it is true. But although that's true, we could also read Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. There's more description of the avatars and of Krishna and different descriptions. So in other words, a devotee wants to do anything and everything they can to become Krishna conscious. Now most people, they're not going to be able to just sit there and read Bhagavad-gita all day, right? So you could say, I could just read Bhagavad-gita and become God realized. Yeah, you can, but how long can you read Bhagavad-gita in a day? So you read Bhagavad-gita for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe. And then what? What are you going to do with the other hours? So therefore, Srila Prabhupada has created through the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, a number of different ways for devotees to be engaged. Book distribution. I mean, talk about an unlimited service. Deity worship, unlimited service. Managing, on and on and on. Unlimited services. Chanting Hare Krishna, cleaning the temple, it's a constant, right? Constant, endeavor to keep the temple clean. So if one gets tired or one cannot do a particular process anymore in a day, then they go to another process. As Srila Prabhupada says, sometimes devotees, they shop for Krishna. Sometimes they cook for Krishna. Sometimes they distribute books for Krishna. Sometimes they talk to others about Krishna. Sometimes they clean for Krishna. Sometimes they sleep for Krishna, right? Different things. So that's the idea, that it is possible to become fully God realized through a particular process, but generally we cannot do a particular process, therefore there's many processes.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much. And there's a question by Maitreya Prabhu. He's waiting.
Okay, sure.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
There's a group of devotees we read Bhagavatam for an hour and a half every day on Zoom. We've been doing it for a few years. We've been through the Bhagavatam a couple of times. And when going through the second canto, with the first step of God realization and reading the universal form, I realized that I had a tendency to sort of look down on this idea. But we were chastened by the fact that, Parikshit Maharaj is a great devotee of Krishna. In his childhood, he preferred to play with deities rather than go out and play with, normal childhood pursuits. He wasn't at all ignorant of the form of Krishna playing the flute in his more exalted form. And yet, he expressed an interest to his spiritual master, Srila Śrīmad Goswami, to find out about how Krishna created the material world, and sat in rapt attention to these descriptions of the universal form. It wasn't like he had something to gain by that other than what he already had. So that's just, that struck me, and all of us as we were reading this, that actually it's purifying. And we're not so advanced that we can just be meditating on Krishna's lotus feet 24/7. If we're on a hike, as you mentioned, or Deride Prabhu mentioned, in the mountains or whatever, seeing those as the bones of the universal form and seeing the trees and the herbs as the hairs on the body, it's a sublime meditation, and it's not the way our minds usually go. So it's definitely a gift of Srila Vyasadeva and Śrīmad Goswami to give us these ideas of the universal form in that way. It's purifying and edifying. And that's all. That was my comment. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Nice comment. Okay.
I just heard Prabhupada answer that on a tape. And he was saying, it's not an either or, I'm not saying anything discounting what anybody else said, but if you love someone, you want to know all about them. It's not that, okay, I'm thinking about the universal form and I'm not thinking about Shyamasundar, it's not like that. You're thinking about Shyamasundar, and just see how amazing my Lord is. He can come as Lord Nrsimhadev. He can come as, Mohini. He can come, the ocean. Just look at all the things that the Himalayan mountains. So it's not one eclipses the other. Oh, actually, Shyamasundar, we would say, eclipses. But while thinking about Krishna, Govinda, two-handed Vrindavan form, you're also thinking how wonderful Krishna is, that he can take all these other aspects. So it's just like if I love someone, but I know he's a judge, or I know he's the president of the United States, or he's a fantastic ice skater, I don't know, whatever it is, So it's an aspect of love that you want to know everything about them.
Yes.
So that's all.
Thank you. Okay. Grantraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai.